Okay, so good afternoon. So this is actually the continuation of the previous talk about maintaining accessibility on the long run through testing. So just to make a quick point, what do you think is the accessibility problem of this? What is the problem with GNU plots 4? The colors. Red and green is the worst choice of colors to do because a lot of people actually can't distinguish, and then like 8% of the people, of the male people, cannot distinguish between the two, or at least have problems. And then with GNU plot 5 they improved this. So you see, I mean, just wondering how many people here, please raise your hand if you are colorblind in the room. Is there somebody? No? Well, that's 8% normally, so statistically there should be 1% at least. Anyway, so what is accessibility? Well, to make it simple, it's making something usable by everybody, whatever the specific needs, situation, etc. So of course it's blind people, deaf people, etc. But also people with cognition issues. I don't know, all people have problems with understanding your software, things like this. Or motor issues, you cannot press a shortcut because you need your both your two hands, and you have only one. And quite often it can be you, because you have a package and you cannot type with the two hands, or a lot of people here have low vision, and you're lucky because you have glasses which you can wear all the time, but some people cannot have this. There's a poll which says actually 10% of the people are really handicapped in their daily life, and 20% would say that they are limited in their daily life due to conditions, whatever. The thing is, it really is a matter for everybody actually. And for free software, this is really about freedom zero, the freedom to run the program for any purpose. Okay, to run, but more to that, to be able to use the program. And then there's the second freedom number one. This is free software, you can modify it. That cannot happen. I will explain why. It's a question of priority. As was mentioned previously, it should be prioritized. It's actually just like security and internationalization. In the rest of the talk, really try at some points thinking, yes, this is like security and internationalization. It's the same kind of, we have to keep it in mind all the time. And the question is, who is doing this? The problem is, it concerns just some fraction of the people. They are already having a hard time using computers and having the skills to actually modify the program. It's even less people. And then you have people who have programming skills and could do something on this, but then being aware and understanding what needs to be done, it's even less people. So there's really an extremely small fraction of the people who can actually work on this. So the sentence, this is free software, you can modify it, that cannot work actually. You could say, okay, let's pay some people to do this. Okay, so we have some people which monitor all the software in the free software world. So we would need a lot of people getting updated with all the evolutions we have here and there. And so we have, for instance, Jean-Marie at Igalia, who does this on everyday life, but she cannot do everything. It's not possible. And spending your whole day just debugging things, it's really more than painful. So no, it's not viable as a solution. So the support has to be spread among every developers, integrating into their development process, just like security, just like internationalization. Nobody develops a software without taking security issues into account nowadays, or at least they shouldn't, really. Accessibility is the same kind of priority. Just to give the low things, so the rights of persons with disabilities, so I put everything so you can read it offline, but basically discrimination is exclusion on the basis of disability, including denial of reasonable accommodation. So even if you don't do this on purpose, it's considered exclusion. And reasonable, what does it mean? Not imposing a disproportionate or undue burden. Okay, it's not much more clear, but at least it has a legal meaning, disproportionate. And the question is how to make it proportionate. So we will propose a regression testing. So there are two things. For start, we want to avoid introducing new issues. So everything that is developed nowadays should not have accessibility issues by pointing them out as soon as the development. While the programmer is programming, the tools tells it, oh, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Here is how you should fix it. And then the programmer learns, and then he will not do the mistakes again. So that's an extremely important thing, to not go back. Make sure that we don't have new issues. While we still have the old issues that we have to work on, so we have a list, and then, okay, we have to work, but it's a second priority after making sure new things don't get regression. So what are we talking about technically? Just extremely briefly, the idea is we want to make the same software accessible for a lot of reasons. I don't detail, but basically we can't re-implement LibreOffice, for instance, so we have to make it accessible. The idea is you have your application, and then the screen reader uses an accessibility bus to access the abstract representation of the application. And this is basically a tree of widgets. And then, okay, you have all the information. Cool. A lot of toolkits provide this information. That's fine. But the problem is, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily usable, because maybe you have this dialog box, and maybe you implemented it that way. So you have labels, and then you have text, and there's nothing that relates one with the other. So ideally, you would say there is a label for some text, but maybe you have just written your code that way. Or maybe it's the XML file you use which imposes that way of doing it. Okay, we could say, oh, sorry about this. You could say that the screen reader should have a script to fix and to know that it should relate one with the other, but it's not viable on the long term, because the screen reader then gets a lot of ugly hacks and it's not maintainable. On the long term, with each new release, you have to fix, to update the hacks. It's not really something we want. Instead, you should just declare properly the relationships between the widgets. To declare them properly means you say that this text is labeled by this label. So that's what we will focus on. Just some takeaway slides. I don't detail them because I don't have the time, but basically design logically without taking into account graphic things. Use standard widgets, use labeled widgets. Make sure you have logical relationships and keep it simple. And making it simple will help everybody actually to use your software. You can try accessibility tools. You can enable the screen reader and see what happens, and try to use just the keyboard, don't cheat, and see what shows up on the Braille device. If you want, there is a debugger to check exactly what is there. Okay, but maybe it's not something that we should promote, because it shows that it's quite a lot of work to work on accessibility. While maybe we can do a lot of things without going that far. So trying to use automatic tests in continuous integration. And that's what we propose as a first step now, to try to avoid some classes of new issues and still have a fix me list to fix the previous ones. The idea is that way we can make people aware of the question with easy enough to fix issues, and then, okay, they take that into account, and then maybe later on we can expand the kind of things we want people to keep in mind all the time when they are developing. So about regressions, you know about regression. So you move one step forward, but actually you go two steps forward and two steps backward, because a new feature breaks an old feature, a bug fix breaks a feature. You have regressions here and there, so you need regression testing and user testing. Concerning accessibility, it's way worse. Usually when you make one step forward, you actually have 10 steps backwards. And new features are just not usable at all, quite often. And bug fixes break usability completely, quite often. And user testing doesn't work because there aren't so many concerned users, and it's difficult for them to test the development versions of your software. And the developers themselves don't have any idea on how to actually fixed it because they are not accessibility experts. So how to test this? What should be done? So regression testing could be an idea to make them learn progressively. So new features, they should be hopefully usable. That is, there are shortcuts, there are logic relationships. Is that convenient? Maybe not, but at least the new feature with some effort should be accessible. I mean, the person who actually needs accessibility, maybe it's not convenient, but at least it can achieve the task with more time that should be ideally be needed, but at least it does work. And for the old features, we should make sure that they remain usable, really. So there are three things we are thinking about right now, which are relatively simple. So labels with widgets, all widgets should have some label which says what it is about, except maybe some special cases. Labels, conversely, if they are there for the visual rendering, that's probably for a reason. And so if there's a label without a widget attached to it, probably there's something problem like somewhere. And also shortcuts, all the widgets should be reachable through shortcuts. So maybe pressing tab, or maybe it's in the toolbar, and so you have an F something shortcut to be able to access it quickly. So maybe these are the really simple rules that could be tested automatically that we can enforce and make sure that they will always work. And that's already a huge progress compared to what we have nowadays. So how to test this? We could try to test online, so run the application and check that we have labeling, but it's quite expensive, it's slow, and okay, but which source line corresponds to that widget? It's difficult. Maybe we can do that inside the toolkit, but it's also the same problem. How do you get back to the source code? Okay, maybe there's research to be done here. Static analysis, parsing the source code. I don't really see how to do this at the moment. I mean, looks not so easy. But a lot of applications use Glade, so XML files basically. And so what we've been working on and will work this month is a tool which shows the warning. So saying that this widget doesn't have a label for, this label doesn't have a widget attached, and this widget doesn't have a label. And they are actually like 16 lines apart, so probably actually these two needs to be related, and that's all. So it's really simple to fix those, and hopefully this tool will allow to make that easy. So of course we have other issues, like there are multiple mnemonic for one widget, or the link is actually broken. Okay, these kind of things we can debug automatically. And we can include that in the build process. So we've been running this on LibreOffice, and we got like 8,000 runnings. That's a lot. We cannot start with compilation 8,000 warnings. So we want to implement a notion of suppression, which says, okay, these 8,000 warnings, we have to fix them at some point, but day 0, we have 0 warning, and we remain at that. And if there are new warnings, okay, we fix them, and then when we have time, when we take the time to do, we fix those old warnings we have suppressed, and then we should be able to make progress, actually. There are false positives. Sometimes you say, no, this actually is not interesting to label or some things. Probably we can automate some of these and mark those which we cannot automate because it's really on the semantic. We will be working on that this month. So to have a look at all of these, try to sort them out, see with the people what they prefer, the way they prefer, etc. So that's the HIPRA company and Martin Piochot who wrote the initial tool, and which we will use and extend, and that's funded by TDF. So it's on some JIT for now. Probably we will try to move it to some place like maybe at GNOME or GitLab, or I don't know. We can discuss. Our idea is that it should be as globally used as possible. It doesn't have to be only for LibreOffice. Maybe there are LibreOffice specific things. From what I've seen in the 8,000 warnings, I probably not so many LibreOffice specific things, I guess. So to conclude, it's really a problem for a lot of people. And actually, as I said before, it actually helps everybody. When you have shortcuts to do your daily work, you actually save a lot of time. So, and making the software simple, etc. It really helps for a lot of things. But we need to raise awareness on this, and regression testing maybe is a nice tool, starting with just a few warnings and see how well it is accepted, etc. And then get to integrate accessibility in the development process itself to enforce the things that, okay, we have agreed on enforcing, making sure that it's always like this, just like security and internationalization. I haven't talked about keyboard shortcuts, but yeah, we will also work on this, just not now. Thanks. So we stay here for the weekend. Maybe just one question.
2 minutes for questions, so if anybody wants, and if the next presenter can start preparing that. So questions?
Yeah.
Can the script be integrated into Glade?
Into?
Can the script be run inside Glade?
So can the script be integrated inside Glade?
Yes.
So I asked on the Glade mailing list. They didn't answer. I'm not sure. Glade doesn't seem developed so much, but yeah, that was our idea. They're saying that, okay, there's that Glade tool, and okay, integrate. The thing is, a lot of people use UI files, but without actually using the Glade library. So I prefer that it's just one script that people use, just like lint, like Valgrind. Valgrind is not inside the compiler. I don't know. But, I mean, we are open to whatever.
Any more questions?
Yeah?
You said there was 8,000 warnings. 8,000 warnings?
Yeah, 8,000.
And I think we have about 1,000 UI files, so that's like 8 warnings per file.
Yeah, usually, yes. So, for instance, I didn't show it, but the sort dialog box, there are 8 warnings, and yes, there are 8 issues. Quite often it's a small issue, that is, you have the word ascending and descending, and you have to know that it's the sort things. And it's just labeling ascending and descending with the sort word. It's small, but it helps a lot actually. And it's really easy to fix. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thanks.